students, today we are going to start our new chapter, Digestion and Absorption. So let's start our chapter on digestion. Okay, now in this chapter we are going to discuss about the human digestive system. As you can see, the diagram of human digestive system is drawn here, and we will try to understand the complete digestive system, its structure and functioning. So let's start our chapter. Okay, in this chapter, first we need to understand that we need food. हमें पता है हम food intake करते हैं. The food which we take, it contains the nutrient, and these nutrients, these are required to provide us energy, and it also required for the body growth and maintenance. These nutrients which are present in the food, they are present in the form of biomacromolecules. Nutrients are present in our food in the form of biomacromolecules, and these biomacromolecules, they cannot be utilized by the body directly. Our body cannot utilize these biomacromolecules. So first, these molecules should be converted into the simpler form. It should be converted into the simpler form. इसे simple form में convert करना होता है ताकि इसे हमारी body use कर सके, या हमारी body के different functioning में like energy given या फिर body की growth वगैरह हर function के लिए utilize हो सके, इसलिए इन्हें simpler form में convert करना पड़ता है body को. And this process is known as digestion. So we can say that digestion is the process of conversion of complex biomolecules into the simpler form. This process known as digestion. And for fulfilling this complete process, the system which is involved is known as digestive system. So here the digestive system is drawn. Digestive system in the case of human being is divided into the two categories or two types. हमने digestive system को two parts में यहाँ पे divide किया हुआ है. First part human being में first part digestive system का कहलाता है alimentary canal. So first part of the digestive system is known as alimentary canal, and the second part is known as associated gland. Associated gland. So these two parts combined they make the complete digestive system. तो हम देखेंगे alimentary canal क्या है. Alimentary canal is a long tube-like structure which has different diameter. So different diameter के साथ बनी हुई एक long tube जैसी structure है जिसे हम alimentary canal कहते हैं. This alimentary canal, it starts from the mouth. It starts from the mouth and it ends at the anus. Mouth से start होते हुए anus तक जो ending point है, यानी कि opening होगी alimentary canal की mouth, and the closing point or the end point of alimentary canal is the anus. So this is alimentary canal. With this alimentary canal, we will include the different parts. इनके अंदर और भी कई parts included हैं, जिसे हम one by one discuss करेंगे. Second is associated glands. Associated glands are the glands which helps in the digestion. They are not directly involved, but they help in the digestion. Without their help, digestion process cannot be completed. So associated gland, in these we will include the salivary glands which are present in our buccal cavity. तो यहाँ पे salivary gland है, these are included into the associated gland. Similarly, we can include the liver, we can include the pancreas, gastric glands, intestinal glands, etc. All these are known as associated glands which help in the digestion of food in the case of human being. So before starting all these things, we need to understand that alimentary canal, the different parts of alimentary canal. Just let's take a look onto the different parts of alimentary canal, then we will discuss it in more details. Alimentary canal, let's see, it starts from the mouth. So opening of alimentary canal is known as mouth. Alimentary canal opens through the mouth. This is the starting point or the opening of the alimentary canal. Now, mouth opens into a cavity. Here you can see this is the cavity. This cavity is known as oral cavity or the buccal cavity. So, mouth open into a cavity which is known as oral cavity. It's known as oral cavity. This oral cavity is again, it has some parts. We will discuss about the palate in the oral cavity, and we will discuss about the tongue and the teeth. These all are the part of oral cavity. So we will discuss about all these in more details. Next, oral cavity opens into the next structure which is known as pharynx. The next part of the alimentary canal is the pharynx. So pharynx is the next structure in which the oral cavity opens up. So here you can see that this is the opening of the oral cavity where it opens and it connects with the tube-like structure which is known as food pipe. So this is the food pipe, a tube-like structure which connects through the pharynx. So pharynx जो है वो oral cavity और food pipe के बीच की एक structure है. Pharynx is known as the common passes for the air and for the food. Air भी इसी portion से होके आती है. And if you look at this part, suppose this is the nasal cavity, this is the nasal pores. ये हमारे nasal pores हैं जहाँ से हम air को intake कर रहे हैं. These nasal pores, from there the air come inside the nasal cavity. Air nasal cavity में आएगी. And here at the back side, this air goes into the pharynx region. The air goes into the pharynx region. That's why we are saying that pharynx is the common passes for the air as well as for the food. So this part pharynx is further divided into the three parts. Pharynx को हम further divide करेंगे three parts के अंदर. That is nasopharynx, oropharynx and laryngopharynx. Laryngopharynx, that is the larynx part. Larynx के बारे में भी हम अभी आगे पढ़ेंगे. Nasopharynx, oropharynx and laryngopharynx. These are the three parts of the pharynx. Now pharynx opens into the next part which is the food pipe. It opens into the food pipe. Next, food pipe connects the oral cavity to the stomach. Stomach is a J-shaped bag-like structure which stores the food and do the digestion also. Stomach is further divided into the different regions. Stomach के भी आगे regions होते हैं जो हम यहाँ पे भी discuss करेंगे. Stomachs open into the next part which is small intestine. Small intestine. The next part is the small intestine in which the stomach opens, and then small intestine connects with the last part of the alimentary canal which is large intestine. And the large intestine open outside through the opening which is known as anus. It ends at the anus. Ends at the anus. So this is about the alimentary canal. Now we will discuss about the oral cavity in more detail. Now let's see the different parts of oral cavity. Oral cavity is a cavity-like structure. The mouth, which is the opening of alimentary canal, is open into a cavity which is oral cavity. Firstly, the mouth open into a slit-like structure which is known as vestibule. So, mouth opens into the vestibule. And now actually what is vestibule? To understand the vestibule, if you roll your tongue on your front incisor, अगर हम अपने incisor पे tongue roll कर रहे हैं, so that part between the teeth and the lips is known as vestibule. So this slit-like structure known as vestibule. The mouth open होता है पहले vestibule के अंदर, and then the behind the teeth, the complete structure of cavity-like structure is known as oral cavity. So we can say that oral cavity has the different parts. It has the palate, it has the tongue, and it has the teeth. So we can say that palate, it's make the roof of the oral cavity. Oral cavity जो roof है, the upper portion of the oral cavity is made up of palate, second tongue, the floor of the oral cavity is made of the tongue, and the teeth is made the sides or the ventral portion of the oral cavity is made by the teeth. So these are the different parts of the oral cavity. Now let's see what is the palate. Palate is the upper part of the oral cavity. The palate can be divided into the two parts. Palate is divided into the two parts. The hard palate and the soft palate. Hard palate और soft palate, इन दो parts में हम palate को divide करते हैं. The anterior part of the palate, अगर हम roof की बात कर रहे हैं और roof में भी जो anterior part है, जो हमारा front का part है palate का, उसे हम बोलते हैं hard palate, because it's supported by the jaw bones, जो कि जो bone है, that is the maxillary bone, it supports the hard palate. It supports the hard palate, and palatine bone is also there. So due to the bony support, this part of the palate, it becomes the hard palate. So अगर हम oral cavity की बात करें, suppose this is our oral cavity, ये हमारी oral cavity है, और ये जो ऊपर हमें दिखाई दे रहा है, this is our palate. So this part, if we draw it here, this part of the oral cavity, this front part of oral cavity is known as hard palate, and this hard palate has some ridges. It has some ridges like structure. Ridges मतलब कुछ उभार होते हैं यहाँ पे इस hard palate के अंदर. These are known as the palatine rugae. इन्हें हम बोलते हैं palatine rugae. And now what is the function of these palatine rugae? These palatine rugae, they helps to increase the grip over the food. And जब भी कोई फूड हम खाते हैं उस फूड के ऊपर ग्रिप को बना के रखने के लिए ये उभारी रीजेस प्रेजेंट रहते हैं हमारे एंटीरियर पैलेटाइन के अंदर या हमारे हार्ड पैलेट के अंदर. एक्चुअली इन द केस ऑफ ह्यूमन बीइंग दीज रुगेस आर नॉट वेल डेवलप्ड. दीज आर डेवलप्ड इन द केस ऑफ कार्निवोर्स बिकॉज दे हैव टू ईट द एनिमल फ्लैश और द मीट दैट दे टेक. इट शुड बी ग्रिप देयर. तो उसे फिक्स रखने के लिए ये रुगेस प्रेजेंट होते हैं कार्निवोर्स के अंदर. सो दिस इज अबाउट द हार्ड पैलेट व्हिच इज हार्ड स्ट्रक्चर एंड इट हैज सम ridges like structure which are known as palatine rugae. The posterior part of the palatine is known as soft palate. पीछे की तरफ का जो पार्ट होता है उसे हम soft palate कहते हैं. If you roll your tongue from the starting to the end of the palate or the roof of the oral cavity, you will feel these things. So hard palate and the soft palate. Soft palate is smooth palate. Here no ridges are present. तो इसी वजह से ये सॉफ्ट पैलेट है. The posterior part of the soft palate, or we can say at the end, the soft palate makes an hanging structure. It makes an hanging structure. So soft palate जो पीछे की तरफ जाने के बाद एक hanging structure बनाता है, इसे बोलते हैं uvula. Uvula. Uvula is the posterior hanging structure of the soft palate. Uvula has a very important function. This uvula closes the internal nares during the swallowing of the food. जब हम फूड खा रहे हैं oral cavity से जब फूड हमारे यहाँ पे आ गया है, mastication किया, हमने फूड को चबाया, उसके बाद जब फूड को हम swallow कर रहे हैं, it's going inside the food pipe. At that time, the internal nares मतलब the nasal cavity which is opening behind through the internal nares. This part of the internal nares should be closed, and to close this, the uvula is there. So uvula यहाँ पे present रहता है. आपने uvula को अगर समझना चाहते हैं तो हम just देख सकते हैं कि अगर आपने cartoons character देखे हैं in the movies or the cartoons, when someone is screaming, बहुत तेजी से कोई चिल्ला रहा है, तो हमें पीछे की तरफ उसके मुंह के अंदर एक ऐसी स्ट्रक्चर दिखाई देती है, ऐसे hanging structure दिखाई देती है वाइब्रेट होते हुए. That hanging structure is the uvula, which is present at the posterior part of the soft palate, and it closes the internal nair during the swallowing of food. So this is about the palate. Two parts: hard palate, soft palate. Hard palate has the palatine rugae, whereas the soft palate is smooth, and posteriorly it contains the uvula. That's about the palate. Now we will look at the next part, that is the tongue. Now next part is the tongue. Tongue, as you can see that, and you know that tongue is the part which helps in the mastication of the food. यानी कि food को चबाने में help करता है. Tongue is a muscular, freely movable muscular structure, and it made up of skeletal muscle. ये बात अगर आप याद रख सकते हैं, इसे ध्यान रखिएगा. Skeletal muscle से बनी हुई structure है, which is moved, it can be moved with our will. So हम अपनी मर्जी से बोल सकते हैं ना, इसलिए. So this is the skeletal muscles and is muscular and highly glandular structure. Most of the glands are all present there. So this is highly muscular and glandular structure. Now let's see the tongue. Tongue is divided into the two parts. Tongue is divided into the two parts, and the dividation, which is known as sulcus terminalis. Sulcus terminalis is the dividation. Terminalis divides the tongue into the two parts. Then one part is known as oral part. This is the oral part of the tongue, and the posterior part of the tongue is known as pharyngeal part. Is known as pharyngeal part. So tongue is divided into two parts: oral part and the pharyngeal part. And the tongue is a freely movable structure, but it's remain attached at the base of oral cavity. जो tongue हमारी आगे से freely movable है, but at the back side, at the posterior part, is remain attached at the oral cavity. So the part of the tongue, or the structure which attaches the tongue to the base of the oral cavity, is known as lingual frenulum. So lingual frenulum is the structure which keeps the tongue attached at the base of oral cavity. In some cases, when the newborn baby borns, then sometimes what happens that lingual frenulum जो होता है ये कुछ ज़्यादा means it's not properly attached. tongue जो होती है वो जरूरत से ज़्यादा अगर attach हो जाती है, tongue की movement नहीं हो पाती. At that cases the kid is not able to speak. तो उस केस में सर्जरिकली इसे ठीक किया जाता है. सो लिंगुअल frenulum is the structure which keeps the tongue attached at the base of oral cavity. Now we know that tongues help in identifying the taste, temperature and texture of the food. ये सब काम भी हमें टंग की मदद से ही होते हैं. For the identification of the taste of the food, it has some papillae over the surface of the tongue. टंग की सरफेस पे कुछ स्ट्रक्चर्स प्रेजेंट होती हैं जिन्हें हम papillae कहते हैं. Let's see what are these. Papillae, which are present on the surface of the tongue, they help in identification of different types of taste, as well as they also work as a different type of receptors. So what are the different papillae? That is velvet, fungiforms, next one filiform and the foliate. These are the 4 different papillae which are present on the surface of tongue. So for velvet are the largest. These are the largest papillae which are present, and they are very less in number. Only 8 to 12 valid papillae are present in the tongue. Similarly, next one, the fungiforms. These are also the papillae which are present here. Now let's see filiform first. Filiforms are the most numerous type of papillae. They are the most numerous and they are smallest. They are the smallest and most numerous. सबसे ज्यादा नंबर में जो होते हैं वो यहाँ पे filiform papillae है जो पूरी टंग पे प्रेजेंट रहते हैं. The fungiform papillae they are present less than in number of these filiform valid. तो इनसे कम नंबर में होंगे, बट सबसे ज्यादा जो होते हैं वो filiform papillae प्रेजेंट होते हैं हमारी टंग के ऊपर. The fourth one is the foliate. Foliates are not much developed in the case of human being. This is the location of foliate papillae, but these are not as much developed in the case of human beings. So these are the 4 different types of papillae. These papillae they help to identify the different taste also. Like sweet taste. Sweet taste is identified through this part, or this part of the tongue is identified the sweet taste. Whereas the salty taste is identified by this part. This center part is identify the sour taste, and the back part, the posterior part of the tongue, is responsible to identify the bitter taste. So these different types of taste are identified by the different parts of the tongue. So that's all. In the next video, we'll discuss about the teeth, their structure and types.